And today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Might have to put that on the record. And
time that will live in history.
We're living history as we're making history. And my name is Susan Caolo. I'm with Artful Journeys, and we're doing a second interview with Charles, go by Chuck Cape, who was in the US Army, was a sergeant, and from September 8th, 1969 through September 1st, 1971. And you did serve in Vietnam and part of the AmeriCall division. Then when you want to go ahead, why don't you tell me, give your affiliation while you were in Vietnam?
I was with the AmeriCal division, as you said, 196 Infantry Brigade, 4 of the 31st Battalion, and Charlie Company. And 11B was my MOS, which is the squad leader, otherwise known as a grunt. So,
okay.
I was a Sergeant E5 squad leader in North Province of South Vietnam, what they call the I Corps.
Okay.
And we were based in Chu Lai, and then we eventually moved up to Da Nang, and I finished my one-year tour in Da Nang. Okay, well, I was drafted after college, and I went into Fort Campbell in basic training in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and spent my basic training there, and graduated, and moved on to what they call advanced training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. So we all got bused. That was quite a ride from Fort Campbell down to Fort Polk. And evidently we were the first ones to be reassigned to Fort Polk. They had closed that fort for a while and evidently reopened it as the training developed for Vietnam and more guys went to Vietnam, that they opened it. I think they said we were the first group to go through there with the reopening. So it was quite interesting, but I got there in I want to say maybe it was fall, September, something like that. So then you spend basically 8 weeks in basic, and then another 8 weeks in advanced, what they call AIT, and that's what I did at Fort Polk.
How was the weather that time of year?
And the thing that surprised me, it's the first time I really spent time in the South, and I expected a kind of nice mild winter, somewhat comfortable, because of course I was used to northern Wisconsin winters, and I thought this weather-wise it was going to be like a piece of cake down there for me, but it wasn't. I forgot about the humidity, so it was really humid and quite chilly actually, and the temperatures weren't there, like when it weren't freezing most of the time. We had a couple down that far, but the chill factor was there. So we were out in, regular heavy fatigue jackets, and we were still basically pretty cold. So the weather was pretty rough, and it rained a lot, which I guess prepared us for Vietnam. But, what do they call that? Oh, I know. I don't know if I put this in the first interview. It's called Tigerland.
No.
We went to Tigerland. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was Tigerland, they called it. And one of the first lectures we got was, you guys will be spending most of your time, including weekends, on the base. We found in the past, when we've had a few people go and spend a weekend, there's nothing but trouble around local towns and villages in Louisiana. It's a rough place. So whatever you do, don't go to, and then they mentioned a couple cities nearby. And of course, we all took mental notes thinking, it's the first time if we do get to leave, we'll probably head to those towns and just check them out. Really as bad as they say.
Bad in what kind of way?
Fights with the locals.
Oh, really?
Getting involved in places where you shouldn't be, and getting involved in drunken brawls and things like that. So the local guys were pretty rough down there, and some of them not only didn't care for the military, but they didn't care for Vietnam. So that was another problem.
Oh.
See?
Oh.
they figured we pretty much were headed to Vietnam, and they knew that because Fort Polk at the time was known as the fort that you would go to before you went to Vietnam. And
Was that the, yeah?
Yeah, I mentioned that one of my buddies preceded me and was in Vietnam, heard I was leaving basic, and he said, whatever you do, hopefully don't get orders for Fort Polk as your next fort, because that means you're headed over here to see me in Vietnam. So that's what happened. But I had nothing to do with that. That was out of my control. But that's, and that's where we got together. Andy Bazar and I spent a lot of time together. I mentioned him before, but.
And where was he from?
Both basic and an AIT, actually. We just went together. He was from Ohio, Lorain, Ohio. Yep. And he was one of the oldest. I was a pretty old guy at the time, being a college graduate.
Okay.
Most of the guys were considerably younger, So Andy was even older than me because he had even been teaching he had been in banking. And that's what he was a banker. Like a Federal Reserve Bank type guy.
Oh.
He had a pretty important position. He's really good in math, and that proved to be helpful. The next station we both went to was Fort Benning, Georgia, and that was an elective on our part. Otherwise we would have had orders for Vietnam, but we asked if we could go to non-commissioned officer training in Fort Benning, which helped us get more training and also helped us in delaying our eventual landing in Vietnam. So we did that together. But he scored real high on the test. We got tested. They're pretty heavy. And unfortunately, I was good in math too. And that ended up putting us in mortars. And angles and geometry and all that kind of stuff were important in shooting mortars and figuring out how to drop the rounds where they're supposed to be and things. So we were both in mortar training there and got, graduated from Fort Benning, and we got a few leaves at Fort Polk, and actually did try and stay out of trouble. We did a pretty good job. We almost got in more trouble on the base than we did going to the local bars. That's because on weekends, you get together and kind of let loose, and you get a day or two to relax and have fun and drink beer and whatever else you want to do there. But
was everyone at that at the time at the base, were they all either going to Vietnam or were training you to go to Vietnam?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then at Fort Benning was known too as airborne training. You could go be an airborne ranger and jump out of planes and parachute. And as we ended our time, I forget why, but they said we'd have a little delay before we got orders for our next assignment. They didn't say Vietnam, but they just said our next assignment. And we were welcome to join airborne training there at Fort Benning and learn to jump out of planes too. Be a ranger and that kind of really a gun-ho type guy, and even consider a career in the military. So Andy and I both declined, said thank you very much, but no, we were not going to do airborne, and we went on from there. But we had a little idle time before we actually got our orders to go, and then of course we both got Vietnam orders. But and that's where we ran into another guy that was the third guy in our group was John C. Calhoun at Fort Campbell, and then he was another older guy like Andy, married with children out in South Carolina. And a little town in South Carolina near Greenville. And he would go home when he could on weekends, drive home and see his family. And then he'd drop us off in Atlanta on the weekend and pick us up on Sunday when he was headed back to the fort to take us back for return to start.
What was the tone in Atlanta then for Vietnam? Or did you,
how
did that compare? No?
Yeah, we didn't get, and see, one of the nice things was we could go on civilian clothes. So that helped. We just didn't have the military uniform, and really, I think that kind of kept anything like that to a minimum that would cause trouble that way. So that was pretty good. Wasn't too bad. I don't remember anything really bad in Atlanta that way. So we're there. So there we got, is that good enough for now, or do you want
Yeah,
me
yeah,
to
yeah.
more?
And then you can move on. How you got from there when you took off for Vietnam. And then I think one of the things we
Oh,
were going to
I
go back.
should, I
Mhm.
should say, yeah, I skipped a step here. Before we went to Vietnam, we had to serve a 8-week on-the-job training
Mhm.
at one of the military forts
Mhm.
as sergeants and as platoon sergeants
Mhm.
in the platoon,
Mhm.
training other guys like where we would have been at AIT in Fort Polk.
Uh-huh.
That's the kind of guys we were help training the group that would pass through there for their 8 week or 10 weeks of training.
Mhm.
So Andy got Fort Polk. He had to stay there. Did
Mhm.
not make him too happy. I got Fort Lewis, Washington.
Oh. Mhm.
And then I forget John C. Calhoun. I want to say maybe he got South Carolina. But anyway, the three of us went separate forts.
Uh-huh.
So then we didn't really know if we were going to see each other again. But that was a fun time,
Mhm.
you know, trying to act like we knew what we were doing and bossing the other guys around. That we had just been in that mode, in Fort Polk not long ago, but now we were the guys that were giving the orders. So
Uh-huh.
that was a little better position to be in. And that was a good time. I had a good time in Washington and Fort Lewis, and that's near Tacoma
Uh-huh.
and outside of Tacoma, and met some friends there that were also sergeants and that kind of thing. So I didn't really see them again though in Vietnam. They got transferred, and I lost track of them. But Andy and John C. Calhoun and I got together in Vietnam again. So.
Uh-huh. And what was the occasion that you escorted? Weren't you selected to escort a
Yeah.
general or somebody high level around the base?
At Fort Campbell, after I looked back through some of my letters, fortunately, that my sister and mother kept from Vietnam and from.
Give the names of your sisters and your mom, so might as well give them some recognition.
All right. My mother is Helen Cape.
Uh-huh.
I have two sisters, Elizabeth, known as Lib or Libby, and
Mm-hmm.
Charlene is my older sister. Libby's my younger sister. Charlene is the older sister.
Okay.
And yeah, and my mother and Libby my mother was having failing health, so Libby was taking care of her and staying with her home pretty much.
Uh-huh.
Char had left and started her own life with her family.
Mm-hmm.
But they were all, I wanted to say that. And in the first interview, I wasn't really bringing out, I kind of talked more that like Lib and my mother were the ones that sent everything to me, but Shar also did. It was just, I was thinking Shar was away at the house, and it wasn't quite the same as my mother and Libby sending me things and letters and all kinds of food and snacks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but anyway, to get back to that, I looked through the letters and it was interesting. I want to say about 40 some letters from Vietnam they had here, and about 20 some that were written as I was going through the different forts in the US before I went over there, but they've kept all of them.
They saved all. Was that your mom that saved all the letters?
My sister, no, Libby really did it.
Mm-hmm.
And she was that way. So that turned out good. And I happened to jog my memory on a couple of things. In fact, I read this and I thought, really? And let me think about that. Did I really do that? And started at Fort Campbell, basic training. There was one day where I was advised, we actually took some tests as far as military and what we're knowledgeable of and different questions about the base and our training. And evidently I scored high enough. I wasn't the only one, but the highest scorers would get a day, this was kind of neat, to spend with the company commander of the whole base. Mm-hmm. And one day I was elected, or chosen, I should say, to accompany the general around his normal one-day duties in his little, Jeep and whatever. And we actually witnessed some graduation ceremony together, and he was, the top guy, and I'm there as his assistant. I was looking that up. He's called General S.H. Matheson.
Mhm.
Salve, S-A-L-V-E is the S for it stands. Okay. And that was where I was called the general's orderly for the day.
Okay.
And I even remember, or I read in my letters that I had asked him, with my wildlife biology degree, is there any chance I could get a MOS or a future assignment managing wildlife on the Army bases that were there? And they actually had people doing that, conservation managing. So I thought that would be ideal for me. So I put in a good word to the general to see if that would be a possibility, but that didn't seem to go anywhere.
But you gave it your effort. That's a good. You took advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I thought that might be a pretty good assignment and get me out of something that could be much worse. But he might have even forgotten about it. He had a lot on his plate for one day and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It was a typical answer. He says, "Well, I'll see what I can do. I don't know. I haven't really been asked anything like that kind of question before. We don't get too many wildlife biologists coming here." Oh, and I know another one. I didn't tell you this before. I learned too that I got interviewed or something. There was something posted about me being a assistant zookeeper during the summer months before I went in the military. I evidently told somebody, maybe the general, that or something. I don't know, but I looked at my letter and they said I was interviewed for that, and I don't know whatever happened to that.
Where did you work in Wisconsin? Had you been a zoo?
At the Racine, Wisconsin Zoo.
Oh.
Racine in southeast Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Where I was born. I was born in Racine. And it was a neat little zoo. It was right on the lakefront, and it was one of the few zoos at that time that were free.
Yes.
Wasn't even fenced in part of the zoo. You could just walk into the zoo and visit. It was quite a different generation.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting little anecdote.
But I did that in the summer, worked actually for the city, and then I filled in because the regular zookeepers wanted to take their vacations during the summer months, so they had to fill in, and I was one of the fill-in to let them go on vacation and do their job for a week or two during the summer, or weeks. I'd rotate, So I worked most of the summer, and that helped me pay for my college when I was going through college.
Oh, that's great.
In Utah State.
That's great. Oh, that's interesting.
Well, anyway, okay, so that was that, and then later I learned too that in Fort Benning, I was awarded what they called the student first sergeant, and that was 5 days, like a week, of acting as a first sergeant for a bunch of guys that were my trainees, but I was then to be in charge of them for a week and act like I was the first sergeant, and I had authority to tell them what to do and what to, how to stand in formation and all that kind of stuff. It was quite a challenge. But evidently I got that because I scored one of the higher scores on the leadership test, one of the leadership tests that we did. And again, I don't think I was the only one. And I think they awarded like the ones that had the highest scores each a 5-day session of doing this. But I was fortunate enough to be one of those selected to do that. It was quite an experience. So
had you been selected? Did you find yourself in leadership positions either in high school or college? Was that how you thought of yourself, or is that something that was new that surfaced while you were when you were going through your Army training?
Yeah, I was no, I don't think I really didn't. I wasn't strong in leadership in high school and then even in college, but I think as I grew up and matured and, I went away to college in Utah and and that forced me to grow up a little and mature. And I think that kind of started me getting into more of a leadership position. But I think it was mostly the military, that the training that I was getting, that at least at Fort Benning, that got me into that kind of thing. But that developed kind of later in my life, really. I mean, not growing up or not anything really. I can't recall that I was a big leader when I was younger, but
Yeah.
I did hang around with a lot of older guys when I was growing up in the neighborhood, so maybe that helped me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of sports together, and they were kind of my mentors. And I didn't have a father, so my father died. I don't know if I mentioned
No,
that.
I don't think you did. No. Mm-mm.
Didn't mention my father. Also Charles,
Mm-hmm.
Charles Benjamin Cape.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up, he was an engineer, civil engineer in
Uh-huh.
Racine, and he died uh, from his first and only heart attack
Oh.
during the night one night.
Oh.
Woke up,
Oh.
didn't wake up, and my mother was
Wow.
there and
Mm.
next to him and
Oh,
called the
wow.
rescue squad, and I was let's see, 6 years old. No, yeah, 6 years old at the time,
Oh, wow.
and they couldn't revive him. They tried everything, they, uh, shocking them and all that kind of stuff to try to
Mm-hmm.
bring him to.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
So
That's
yeah,
rough.
early
That's rough.
50s. He
Huh.
wasn't very old. So then my mother ended up raising us with some help from our neighbor man next door when it
Mm-hmm.
called for some discipline, particularly for my brother Tom. I had a
Mm-hmm.
brother Tom too.
Okay.
Thomas.
Yeah. Okay. You hadn't
Thomas
mentioned.
Thomas Benjamin,
Uh-huh.
2 years older than me,
Uh-huh.
and Charlene was like 3.5, 4 years older than me. But Tom too passed away in his early 50s.
Oh gosh.
He too was an engineer. He was a mechanical engineer, and
Mm-hmm.
he. So I. That's one of the reasons when poor mom was raising four of us, right?
Yeah.
And we did have a close uncle, my dad's brother Clarence,
Mm-hmm.
and his wife Stella helped out and came over quite often to fill in and take us places. And every Christmas, Clarence would take us down to Chicago, and we'd visit Marshall Fields. And the
Mm.
Prudential building at that time was like the tallest building in Chicago.
Oh.
And you could go up there and overlook the city, and and that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of neat at Christmas time. And Marshall Fields was neat too. That's what he did. And they took us other
Wow.
places. And then I had a next door neighbor that took me to a lot of the Milwaukee Braves games, baseball.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of neat. He acted because he had an older son, but I was quite a bit younger than his son. So
Mm-hmm.
he kind of, how do you say it? I'm thinking of the word, but his son was kind of away in at college, and him and his wife were there by themselves, kind of
Mm-hmm.
empty nested
Kind of
type.
adopted, took
So
you
he
in. Mm-hmm.
kind of adopted me, yeah. Said,
Yeah.
hey, you kind of missed that. Jim
Yeah.
wasn't around. His son wasn't around
Uh-huh.
anymore, so I lived that role, and he liked that. So,
Yeah.
and he, even after I came back from Vietnam and jumping around a little bit, he had a bowling alley. And I came back from Vietnam, and I got to make some kind of, I got to get a job here. I can't just try
Uh-huh.
to adjust
Uh-huh.
to the civilian life forever here. I got to get a job. He said, Chuck, I need a bartender at my bowling alley. But if you're interested, I could give you some, pretty good hours and pay you pretty good, but you got to get a bartender's license. So I got a bartender's license and worked for him at the bowling alley for a while.
Oh,
That was one of
that's
my
nice. Oh, that's
interesting
a nice.
jobs.
That's good. Do you remember his
So
name?
that was good.
Did you say his name? Do you remember who it was?
Yeah, Wes Christensen.
Uh-huh.
Wes Christensen was the next door neighbor, and his
Uh-huh.
son was Jim. And Jim and Shar had a little bit of a romantic thing going on for a while because they were similar age, see?
Uh-huh.
But that never did work out. But anyway, yeah, he was a real nice guy. Real enjoyed working for him and had some funny experiences. I mentioned that a little, I think, I talked about a little
Mm-hmm.
episode
Yeah.
we had, a couple of them at the bar, at the bowling alley, serving the old-time retired men's group.
Uh-huh.
They'd have shot in the beers at 10 o'clock in the morning and bowl, and get kind of tipsy, and had to stop a couple of them driving.
In the morning.
Sure they weren't going to get the car. Yeah. So that was a little extra challenge I didn't anticipate that I might get into, but
Yeah, a little,
yeah.
little good training and role
And then he
models.
taught me how to bowl too. He helped me bowl. I should mention this too, real quick. My dad, Charles, was a great bowler.
Oh.
And he ended up one year in a tournament. Well, he went to a couple of tournaments, but one year he was the doubles champion with another guy for the whole state of Wisconsin. He ended up being the doubles champion.
Wow.
So naturally, Tom and I both were pretty good bowlers. But Wes Christensen, being in the bowling business, helped me too, and he actually, helped me with the way I threw the ball and advised me, and he told me how he's going to get me the right bowling ball and this, this, that, and the other thing. So he was a kind of a good substitute dad for a while.
Yeah, a good. Sounds like a good role model.
Yeah,
of a surrogate father. That's great. Yeah, I'm sure
good
they had a
too,
positive influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounded.
And both him and his wife were real sweet people. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. But to get back to then, after that was the. I guess there wasn't anything else. I covered that pretty good on the student first sergeant, but.
And then you took off. When were you shipping out? When you shipped out to Vietnam?
And then we had a home leave before we had to ship out. So I came back from Fort Lewis and spent a little time at home. And then I shipped out and actually, flew back out through Fort Lewis, over to Vietnam, through and over Alaska and then Korea. We stopped in Alaska and Korea. Then the Philippines. Stopped in Manila for a while for a rest. We had cheering Filipinos at the airport, cheering us on the way to Vietnam. We didn't get out of the airport. We just took a break at the airport for a few hours. But that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
I know some guys that had to go on Vietnam by a boat.
Oh.
The ones that went earlier.
Oh.
They've got some experiences going on a boat over there, and I was glad to hear that. I didn't even think about that. Of course, everybody was flying when I was going to Vietnam, so we all flew over there. I think it was about 22 hours. That's what I remember. All 22 hours to get there.
In a commercial plane?
Yeah. Well, or a charter commercial. Yeah. So it was all military on the plane, all of us. And then they were flying into Cam Ranh Bay, which is outside of Saigon, way in the south. And that's where you took your initial process, stayed there for a day or two, a couple of days, a few days, I think, forget how long. And then we got our orders for where we were all going next. And I don't think I met Andy or John C. Calhoun until I got to Chu Lai, where we all got orders. What are the chances for America?
So you didn't know that you were all going to end up in the same area?
No, we were just all squad leaders, and we were supposed to be going into mortar squads in Vietnam. And I think I told you that story a little bit, but I could tell you again. But what happened was we ended up all getting orders for, it could have been anywhere in Vietnam.
Right.
And we got orders we bumped into the two other guys there in Chu Lai. I got up to Chu Lai to the Americal division, and so did they. Americal was based in Chu Lai, and that's where we all ended up. And it wasn't long, I think it was in Cam Ranh Bay where they changed our MOS to 11B instead of 11C. 11C was what we went over as. That was mortar squad leaders. To be a little bit farther back from the front line on the bases, on what we call fire bases in Vietnam, with the artillery shooting mortars, mortar rounds. And when we left Cam Ranh Bay, we were made 11B Bravo, which meant squad leaders in the bush and the front lines.
Was that a promotion?
More adventure, yeah. More exercise.
That's where your wildlife biology comes in.
Right, yeah. So anyway, yeah, they gave us all M16s and not mortars. So that was, so then we went through another training and jungle training and more specific stuff about what's up ahead, what we're going to get faced in the jungle and Chulai. That was a couple of weeks if I remember right, and training, pretty intense training. But we had the nights off, and like a weekend day, I want to say Sundays we were off, and we could get together and have a little fun on Saturday night or something and have a break. But it was pretty intensive training. And I tell the story, and I think it was the first night, I'm pretty sure I was there in July. As dusk came and it became nightfall, all of a sudden we hear this siren going off. Everybody yells, "Get in the bunkers, get in the bunkers." And we were in the bars. We were in the bar there and having a cold beer or whatever and hamburger. And so we all ran out and went to the bunker. As we were going to the bunkers, we hear this whistling sound overhead, and we were getting mortar rockets from the Viet Cong and VC, from the North Vietnamese. And they were fortunately going over our heads. Very few landed and caused any damage. But they already had places built like under the hooches and where sandbags, and you could go underground even and have protection under there. So that's what we did. But that first or second night, and I'm going to say to myself, we said to ourselves, we just got here. This is a heck of a
you were on the base.
We got another 360 days of this, and we're not even out in the bush yet. They're already trying to get us.
Was that normal then, though? Did you hear later? Was that a routine? Yeah.
It was pretty normal, and they had been rocketed. Every few nights I found out you could expect to get, and they had patrols going out trying to get around the perimeters and going out to stop this from happening, but they just couldn't put a stop to it. They were shooting, and we were right on the South China Sea there, right on the coast, be the east coast of Vietnam, in Chulai, and walking distance to the water where we were in Chulai, where we were being trained. So these mortar rounds, most of them landed on the beach or in the water. They were overshooting. And they fortunately didn't have the math background that we did to figure the angles right.
Were you scared, or was you just too venturesome to? Do you remember how that?
Yeah, I was scared. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't know what to expect, and if this was going to be a regular thing, and if my name was going to be on one of them, that kind of thing, and our name was going to be on one of them. Yeah.
So that already crossed your mind starting off.
They'd randomly land all over the place, but you never knew. So yeah. And they didn't prepare us for that. It wasn't like, when we landed in Chulai, they didn't say, expect you might get rocketed every few nights or something. It was a total surprise when those first rounds came in. So they could have told us, prepare us better.
Well,
that would have helped. But the uncertainty of it was a little frightening.
I can imagine. It's kind of a test of your fortitude. Yeah.
Yep.
I know you need to get to the, I know we're going to clarify your kind of closest call.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, but kind of jump. You can kind of summarize or lead to where that happened, but or whatever you want to do. That kind of the steps y'all took.
So I got orders for going out from our fire bases. We all operated off of fire bases, and our two fire bases were Siberia, and we went off of Siberia quite a bit, and then we'd go out for patrols from there, from the fire bases. And the other one was Fire Base West, were the two fire bases I went off of. And Andy was with me as another squad leader in our company. And John C. Calhoun got with the 1st of the 46th in Americal, and we were the 4th of the 31st. So we were separated there. Andy and I were together, but John went there. So we didn't see or know where he was going to be after that. And it was hard to keep communication, and we kind of lost track of him after that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, our job then was to go out and find the enemy, and if he didn't find us first, hopefully we found him first.
Mm-hmm.
And we go out for several weeks off the fire base and camp out in the jungle and spend a few weeks out there, normally 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and then come back for a week on the fire base.
Mm-hmm.
And then go back out again. And the companies would rotate on the fire base to keep security around the bunkers, around the perimeter of the fire base, where the artillery and all the
Mm-hmm.
command headquarters were at the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
That's where these fire bases were, at the top of the mountains. And so one particular day, we went out on a patrol, and my point man triggered. I told you about this, and I just wanted to clarify a little about it, but I wasn't sure the size of the bomb. I told you that it was rigged up to be a booby trap,
Mm-hmm.
detonated with a tripwire across the path we were on. So my point man tripped the tripwire as we were walking through the jungle, and he yelled out, "Everybody down," because he knew something bad was going to happen. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked into it a little after I had said, and I think I was confused. I didn't know for sure how big to tell you the bomb was, and I didn't want to exaggerate it, but I underrated it. I think I said 200 pounds. I thought, well, 200 pounds, somebody could pick that up. You know, that's not.
Uh-huh.
So I pretty much concluded it's more like 500 pounds. It was a big
Mm-hmm.
one. I told you basically how long it was, you know, like stretch your arms. It was longer than arms stretched. And
Yeah, well, go ahead and explain it for someone who's just maybe listening to just this clip, because it was interesting. He tripped the wire, but then nothing happened.
right. And that's one of the times I decided that, God, maybe you're watching over me.
Mm-hmm.
Or us,
Mm-hmm.
my squad. Because we learned it, nothing happened. So we had to figure out, what do we do next? And we thought, the first thing you think about, it's going to be an ambush, that there's VC around and they're going to start shooting at
Oh,
us,
yeah.
and shooting grenades and stuff. Nothing happened. It was all quiet. We waited a little while. We started getting up and walking around a little bit. So first thing, you know, Gilbert Meyer was my point man, I think was the name of the guy. And he came back, and I had mentioned, you know, I could tell he was petrified. He had just had a because he was right there. He's the guy that tripped the wire.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, you know, back in a squad leader, you're back 3 or 4 or 5 guys back in your squad walking down the trail.
Mm-hmm.
So I was back a little ways, but he came back and told me what he did, tripped the wire, and nothing happened. So I said, well, now we got to figure out what we're going to do about this. We got to figure out. And then I thought, well, if we follow the wire back to this, whatever that might be booby trap too. So we had a lot of things to consider here.
Mm.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
But the end result was, quite unbelievably, we figured out the tripwire broke between our trip on the trail back to the detonator and the bomb, due to the rusted wire.
Oh, wow.
It had rusted and weakened so much that the pressure, instead of holding it together and pulling the detonator and blowing us to smithereens, broke somewhere along the line. So it stopped it from detonating. And it was just, I guess, because of the time and
Mm-hmm.
climate and stuff. And it was probably some kind of non-coated wire or whatever. But the result was it broke, and it didn't detonate. So then we walked back and kept looking around and found this camouflaged bomb in the jungle there that the wire the end of the wire was going to.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all thanking the good Lord for letting us live. And we had to figure out, so I called back in to get directions of what do I do now with this thing? Well, you got to blow it up in place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of it. we have what they call C4 to do that with. That's the explosive we had in Vietnam. We all had some C4 that we had to use to put on the bomb and then set it up with wire, again with an igniter and with a wire, and we come back a distance we felt it was a safe distance, squeeze the igniter that triggered that bomb to go off. So that's what we did. We blew up the bomb.
How far, about how many were in your group then at that point?
So we would go out about 7 or 8 of us.
And was this
About
something, yeah, go ahead.
About 8 of us in the squad.
But from the time that the wire got tripped and then to where you then had to detonate, to destroy the bomb, how was that in the same day? Everything all in the same day, or did you camp out?
Yeah. We had, the orders were we don't want to leave it in place. We don't want to give it another opportunity because they might come back and set it up again, or booby trap the weight around it. We that could have happened too. They could have had the booby trapped around the bomb itself. And so, no, it had to be the same day. And as soon as we could get this set up and get us all a fair distance away, safe distance away, to blow it in place. So that's what we did.
How far away? Could you estimate what was it a big explosion? It had to have been.
Yeah, it was a big explosion, and I mentioned, the branches and pieces of almost, I think, entire trees were derooted, pulled out of their roots.
Oh wow!
Like flying through the air toward us and stuff. So that
was definitely a lucky.
Well, it's pretty heavy jungle, so I want to say, I think of maybe, I don't know, maybe 100 and some feet, between 100 and 150 feet away we were, something like that.
Wow.
So we had a lot of brush and things in between, but still, that was metal and chunks of metal and whatever else was in that bomb coming out, scattering all over. So there wasn't a lot of protection, but I don't know. I'm just estimating that's roughly the distance we were. But I think I never confirmed, but I figured I'd assume that it might have been from a B-52.
Okay.
One of our big bombers. It dropped it.
Wow.
And I think I can't even remember the specifics, and I don't remember taking a picture of it. Like we had, if it was any U.S. markings on the bomb. I can't recall that. I can't recall, but the size of it, I don't know what else where it could have come from other than a B-52, which they were commonly flying over and dropping bombs in those days. So,
yeah.
And they had some big bombs. So I think the 500 pounders are the biggest they were dropping at the time. I don't know.
But it didn't explode.
Nope.
So you took care of that.
So after that, I had assigned a different guy to walk point for the rest of the day for us, and put Gilbert back a ways back, because see if he could get his color back in his face.
Oh, poor guy. I know we talked about, did you want to cover anything else while you were in Vietnam, or we talked about? Well, you were, I mean,
I already mentioned it. Yeah, we ended up, what do you think? I mentioned the, Firebase Marianne episode and all that, and then Happy Valley was where we hit, most of the trouble, and got most of the trouble, and had to go back in a couple times back into Happy Valley. And that's where the Viet Cong were up in caves, mostly, and they were sniper firing us and coming down and setting booby traps during the night, and then going back up there during the day. And that's the first place we actually, we had jets called in for napalm, and they dropped napalm. That's the first time I had seen that live in Vietnam, to see what kind of destruction that did.
Wow.
That just burns, it just starts on fire the whole side of the mountain as these jets flying over.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the other ones was the Cobra gunships came in when we were engaged the enemy down there in Vietnam and in the Happy Valley, and the Cobra gunships were coming in,
Mm-hmm.
shooting at them, and had quite a time of it then for a while. And we lost our company, not my radio man. Each squad leader had a radio man.
Yeah.
And then they had the company radio man, who's, the radio man for the company commander, the captain that was in charge of all of us guys. And he's the guy that got shot and killed in Happy Valley by sniper fire. But see, with those radio guys, they had to stick their antenna up in the air to make the radios work. It was like painting a target on their back. So we think that's why he was singled out and got it. We didn't. But we're very fortunate. I don't know how, again, it had to be a miracle because they were sniper firing us almost every day. We were down in the valley, and there were, jungle and openings. So almost every time we came, not every time, but often when we came to an opening, we started hearing the sniper fire, zing, zing, the bullets coming down. And how we didn't even have another one injured that I recall getting hit by sniper fire, which, I think about it, it's quite miraculous. Yeah. And then, we tried to shoot the artillery. We called in artillery to drop bombs on the caves and the hills where these guys were. There are actually days when we saw them up there, sitting there next to the opening of the caves with our telescopes or binoculars, 2 or 3 of these Viet Cong sitting there, having a smoke, calling in artillery. And when we did that, I was trained on calling in artillery. But we had higher ranking lieutenants and captains. Okay. So normally they would call it in instead of me. If I'm there by myself in trouble or something, I could call it in. I started with the lieutenant's supervision to start calling in because he knew I was trained, maybe better trained than he was, because I went NCO school. It was good training. So I wanted to call in the coordinates for the artillery. And usually they bracket it. They'll purposely shoot one long, one short, and the third one right on target. See? So you're safe. So you're not dropping it on yourself. So anyway, I called it in, and I don't know if it was a lieutenant. Yeah, I think it was my acting lieutenant. No, Cape, I think we got to do that a little bit more. Got to widen that up a little bit. I said, no, I've already got a safety factor in here. No. So he made it different, added distance to it, okay? So we're watching, and they're sitting there in daylight. So the artillery, you start hearing boom, for the initial blast from the fire base. You wait a few seconds, then you hear this whistling sound as the artillery rounds coming in. Guess what happened? I think I told you this. The artillery round, sure enough, didn't hit anywhere near the guy. I'm talking a pretty good side of the mountain. It went over his head, over in the mountain. So you could actually see the guys go like this. So that's what the lieutenant did to me. So then guess what? Those guys jumped through their cigarettes and jumped down in their little holes, way down in their little caves. And next thing we know, I don't know that we ever got them. We might have blown up the cave so they couldn't get out, and they suffocated to death, but it sure didn't land on them to do the damage we anticipated. I was so mad. Because I think my coordinates were right on and his weren't. But
so you trusted yours better, more.
Kind of proved to be that he was off. He was way too far. And he should have been hitting at least the side of the mountain, maybe just above their heads, or not completely over the mountain. It blew up way down. We hardly heard the explosion. It's so far away.
That's good. I don't think it would have been. Was it funny at the time? No.
Not funny.
No.
And these were 105s and 155s for the artillery numbers that were on the fire bases. And of course, the 155 shot bigger rounds farther than the 105.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing we decided. Do we want a 105 round or a 155 round come in? So anyway, that was another story, but
Mm-hmm. Made it through there.
it felt good that I had, well, I wanted to use my training for that, but it was the first opportunity I got to do it myself in the real world, real fight combat situation. So,
and you have to do it.
Being in mortars, I understood that too.
Mm-hmm.
The angles and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a bigger form of a longer shooting range than a mortar type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mentioned to you that we had a couple different company commanders. The first one was real good. These are captains.
Okay.
2 silver bars, captains.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one that was really good got replaced by a second one that was not good at all. And basically those guys went through West Point and captains, officers training at Fort Benning is where they got their single bars or double bars.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all kinds of trouble with the second captain because he wasn't trained well enough. He hadn't the experience of, I think our first captain had already served earlier in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And this captain, the second one was Green. He was
Straight
been trained in the U.S. and sent him over to Vietnam to take over.
Do you remember his name or you don't?
Yeah, I was Captain Kratz.
Okay.
First one was Captain Robert A. Milner, which
Mm-hmm.
is a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was Captain Kratz.
Okay.
And Captain Milner was the one. I think I looked for Captain Kratz too. I don't know if we wanted him to come to the reunion. Anyway, we did want Captain Milner, and I told you this story that we looked high and low and behind every rock we could try to find. We got help to try to find where is Captain Milner. We knew it was Robert A. Milner.
Uh-huh.
We knew he was a little older than us, so we knew basically his age. We knew he came from Massachusetts. That's where he lived when he came in. And no one could find him. We could never locate what happened to him. So we never got him to come to it. We all wanted him to come to our reunion, of course. But we did get our lieutenant to come, and he's been coming, our immediate lieutenant. So we had the lieutenant, and then, captain was over the lieutenants.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Walter Yadzimus was the lieutenant.
Yadzimus?
Yadzimus with a J.
Oh, okay, Jasmine's. Well, do you want to kind of sort of, for ending, two things to talk about. You did have a reunion, about the reunions, that when you started having reunions, and if you could make a comment, about, you went quite a while without having one. What sparked you to have one? And then what's happening now because of our, I think, bring it current with our COVID-19, since this is going to be, for the record, it has an impact on your reunions and how important that is.
We had a mini reunion when we lived in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 couples that were from my squad came to visit with their wives.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. We talked about getting the group together then, eventually. And they just spent like a couple days with us, and then happened to be, I think it was a Veterans Weekend. So it was either Veterans Weekend or the wall, the what do they call it? The mobile wall or the
Vietnam, the wall that he,
they took around the country.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And that was there that weekend too, I think. And there was a parade though. There was a parade. So we all, the 4 of us, 3 of us walked in the parade. And we talked about getting together again, getting the other guys, finding guys, and that didn't happen. So Beth started working on me, but wait a minute, before that, I should say this, before Beth started working on me, Aubrey Tiller, my radio man, contacted me through Facebook. He was from Oklahoma and was in Oklahoma, and saw Chuck Cape on Facebook, and I was on Facebook, but and to this day, I hardly use it. I hardly do anything, but my name was there. So he says, "Are you the Chuck Cape that I served with?" And that's how we got started. And it got the group together, and we said, "Hey, we should get together and try to get our group together." This is 40 years after Vietnam.
Yeah.
So we left Vietnam in, 71. So this would be like 2001. And then Beth and I we talked about it and said, yeah, somebody should do it. I wonder if anybody else is going to do it. Doesn't look like it. So Beth said, why don't you do it? We can do it. So we did it. And I've got, and I don't know if I'm trying to remember what I sent you, but this is, I sent you that one about, I think I did, the story I gave to the local newspapers for our first reunion. And where we said he said that I used the social media to try, besides Facebook, to find some of these guys. Spokio and let's see. Here, I think this is it. And I don't remember if this looks familiar to you?
Hold it up. I can't see it yet. Hold it. No, I didn't. No, that's one.
I didn't think I sent it to you.
No, I have not seen that. So you can send that to me.
This is People Smart. That's the other one I use.
Okay,
so
yes.
People Smart got wind of this, found it, the newspaper wrote an write-up in Destin, in the Panhandle, about a reunion. I had reporters come out and interview me. It bothered me because I had to take time away from my guys.
Yeah.
Talk to these reporters. And explain, the whole deal. And it took a while. But Spokio and People Smart were two that I used. And it said that, this is the write-up. I did that, and then there's another one here. I don't think I've sent you this one either. Army veterans swap stories at 40-year reunion. Okay.
You talked about it, but no, I don't have that. So I'll have to get a copy of that for you.
That was in the Destin Log, which was the newspaper down there.
You mentioned it, but no, you did not have it.
Yeah. No, I know. I think I said I'd have to look further to see if I could find these. I think is what I left it with you. But now I got it, and I can send them to you if you want them. But
yeah,
this is talking about our reunion there. Here's just and I found a picture. One of the ones we took. I don't know. It's kind of hard to see.
You'll have to hold up kind of toward where your face is. Hold it back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And this is, one group, a mini group of the attendees, including myself, kind of in the middle there with the 5 other guys. The guy on my left is our Lieutenant Yadzimus, who's in charge of all this. He's from Panhandle, Florida. So, just south of Georgia. And then, I told a story about Spanky. Remember Spanky? I called the guy that I called, and right?
Yeah.
I didn't even have a clue if this was the right guy, but he answers the phone. Spangler was his name, last name. Spangler in Kansas. I said, "Is this Spanky?" The last he heard of Spanky was 40 years ago. But I called, this is a neat thing. I called him and it was his birthday. He was in the middle of his birthday party. But that's him. Let's see. 2 to the left, next to the lieutenant.
You have to hold up higher. Kind of back by, yeah, okay, to the left. I gotcha.
See him? that's Spanky. And then my radio man is on the far left, Aubrey Tiller, that first connected with me through Facebook.
Uh-huh. With the hat on?
Yeah.
Okay.
From Oklahoma. Okie.
Okie.
He was really young to come in. He was, but married. He married his high school sweetheart. I think very early, I want to say, I don't know, I think they were 17 or something when they got married. Really young. And he and I hooched together over in Vietnam. They put us together. Like I said, the two of us didn't know the first thing about building a hooch and keeping the rain out and keeping the bugs out, how we're going to do it. And they put us together, us two dummies. And then the guy on the right here is Dan Fuller from upstate New York.
Okay.
And he and his wife ended up organizing the future reunions after Beth and I stopped doing it. We did the first two in Destin. And then we changed the locations after that. And then the Fullers, him and his wife Lee, L-E-I-G-H, Lee Fuller, were the ones that organized it. And then this is Milton Skramanek.
Yeah, you'll have to take a picture of that and send to me.
Okay. I wrote the names. You see, I wrote the names under it.
Oh, you do have it. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it will. We'll get a picture of that because I'll add that. And so
I have this too.
Oh yeah, your maps.
I think you got a map like that. But
something like that. Yeah, that's the one
show
that's
you
a little different.
Where and where all these places were.
Well, do you want to say something? Because you had what about this year with your? Yeah. Maybe this little. Say a little snippet that you might want to share if some of your buddies were going to hear a little message from you talking about the next reunion or the one that was supposed to be in September. You have a little message for them and maybe we can relay it.
Basically what we did after our first reunion, and it went over really good, and everybody had quite a time of it. And then, so we decided we were going to do it again. So then decided every 2 years we try to get together again. So that's what we basically have done since. And now we've gone to different places like San Antonio and Dollywood up in
Tennessee, Sevierville.
And yep, and now the one that we're going to have in September of this year, 2 years since we had the last one. Last one was in Dollywood. And every time we find somebody new or somebody else comes that hasn't come before. So that's neat. We don't just all, get together again. It's 1 or 2 or 3 new ones come and haven't been able to come to the previous ones. So we've ended up looking, can't find anymore, but they're the ones we contacted in the past that now could come, and they didn't come to the other ones. So one of them was Tootie. Benny Sims is his real name, out of Louisiana. I got to tell you this quick story. I don't know if I mentioned it in the first interview. The second, well, we found him. He couldn't come to the first reunion in Destin. The second reunion, he said, I think I can make it. I'm going to make it. He was a trucker in Louisiana. And Andy Bazar's squad, not me. He carried the M60 machine gun part of the time, that big, okay? And I was so glad because no one had seen him, in the first reunion. And the second reunion, we're looking forward to seeing Betty, or Tootie. And again, no one's called me that since Vietnam.
Tootie.
Anyway, and we're sitting there on the beach as people come in, and first day, it's getting to be a little late. I'm going, well, there's no Tootie here. Has anyone heard from Tootie? No, he's coming. Well, I better give him a call. So I called him. Tootie, this is Chuck. Where are you, man? We're waiting for you. What? No way, you're joking. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's not this weekend, it's next weekend. I said, Tootie, we're all in Destin. It's today. So we missed the second one.
Oh, that's funny.
So then I caught up with him, and he went to San Antonio. I didn't go, Beth and I didn't go to San Antonio. So the next one is Dollywood. That's when I saw Tootie for the first time.
Tootie.
He made it. He had a little trouble there too. I won't go into, he seems to have a cloud hanging over his head. He had to leave early. Some problem with his son or something happened, but at least he made it. We got to see him. So that's just a little side story to our reunion. Well, all that being said, of course, then in Dollywood, we decided we're going to get together again in 2 years. And next few months we decided, and we all voted as to where we'd like to hold the next reunion. Ended up being Hilton Head, South Carolina, this September. So we had our hotel reservation in and getting ready, talking about it. And again, a great turnout. Is going to be over 30 of us coming together. Wives and girlfriends too, if they want, you know. It's always the couples, or they bring a girlfriend if they want. They don't have a spouse to bring. So anyway, then the whole thing turned upside down with the pandemic and all this junk. So Doc, our medic, together with the Casey's in Chicago, organized the one in the last one. No, yeah. Anyway, they were the organizers. So Doc and the Casey's decided, they're both in Chicago area, because of the pandemic and because of the age of us, and because of most of our health conditions aren't what they should be. So we're primary candidates to catch the coronavirus. They decided to cancel it.
Okay.
We don't want to put anybody in jeopardy, and we don't know how long this thing's going to last through the fall. They're talking about it coming back in the fall, and we just can't go through with it. So
yeah.
And I just felt really bad because we do it every 2 years, and we get 1 or 2 new ones coming, but we also lose some, either through health or through death.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the guys, if they're not the health problem, their wives or spouses or girlfriends have a health problem. We've even had couples cancel because their dog got sick. Their dog.
Yeah, the pets.
Their pets. Yeah, they couldn't make it. So anyway, I thought, well, now what? So what's it going to be? Another 2 years? Are we going to do it next year? And so that's being tossed around now. We don't know.
Well, could I ask you, what do you think? I mean, you've done a little bit of this. What do you think if a couple of guys at least could make a phone call and you could have it, you know, it would be tiled. It wouldn't, you know, it's not in person, but it's safe. What do you think about possibly trying to use the social media, either do something like a Zoom, and because really all they have to have, it can be on a smartphone, or you think you might want to get a little check with your friends? You've been really good. You've been adventuresome doing all this.
Yeah, it's a good question and good possibility.
Yeah, well, check it out and let me know. And you know, I can arrange, you know, like just so that all they have to do is push a link and y'all can connect.
Because we have, like, when we get together and some of the guys couldn't make it at the meeting when we get together, we did FaceTime and actually called them up and did FaceTime with them. And
but
they really enjoyed that.
Yeah, well, this is because of the COVID, it's making it to do the groups that you get 30, 40 people. I mean, so
I think it's
check it out.
That I get more familiar with it, but then I got to try to get everybody else familiar with it too, right?
Well, I'll just offer this: if when you're talking to anybody and they're even open to it, then because it might be just a phone call ahead or a family member, but it's really pretty, as you can see, it can be pretty easy. You know, just have to set it up. So just get some feedback from a couple of people, and I'll be happy to at least arrange the platform for you, that there's a number everybody can call. And then also the benefit, I can even record it for you, so we have that. But sometimes it's comfortable because people are getting more comfortable with this, so that you can be sitting comfortably in a chair at home,
Yeah.
you know, and a family member can be there. You know, you can, it's informal. It's not a formal meeting, or it's not like that. So check it out. I'd be happy to organize it in any way. Just and I'd also be happy to, if I need to call somebody ahead of time on a one-on-one, like I've done with you in some ways, just to kind of find out what kind of system they have and just try to simplify it. So we could maybe try that and see how that goes. So I think we could wrap up. We could always do another one. This was great. This is great. This is easy.
And we had, this time, we did have, like, again, we found, I think there's at least 2 new guys that we hadn't had before ever attend. And I think both of them had a problem with attending this time, and do have a problem. So that would be really nice if we could get them on a Zoom and see each other face to face. One in particular, one was called Spud, because he lived in Idaho. And he was I was kind of like his mentor in Vietnam.
Okay. Oh, all right.
He came in as a sergeant, like, you know, I told you what they called us out of NCO school, right? You remember that one? They called us shake and bakes.
Oh, yes.
Like instant sergeants. We didn't, you know, come up the hard way through the years to make sergeant, different steps. They suddenly were a sergeant. Well, he came over after me, completely green like me, and I could relate exactly what he was going through. And I kind of took him under my wing, and I didn't realize quite, I guess, how much he appreciated it. When we found him, he says, I couldn't have got through Vietnam without you.
Oh. Well, you know, that's another, I would like to ask that, just from your perspective, because you went through training, then you did that like an internship where you had to, you know, you had to turn around and lead the young men behind you. What is a difference? Because you've been, for somebody who isn't, you referred yourself as a grunt, but you're the sergeant responsible for your men, for a small group of men, so you get to know them closely.
Yeah.
What is the difference between being the leader of them and one of the men? What would you say? You've been in both sides? You've been under a captain. What is it?
Yeah.
What's the perspective? What's like when you're in Vietnam, or that responsibility? What is the difference between when you're leading or looking up to somebody for orders?
Of course, you know, you have the responsibility of their lives. And I think it's important. And there's different ways of leading. I was not what you'd call a real forceful leader, but one of the things I did was try to learn as much as I could personally about the guys in my squad that I was leading.
Okay.
So I could better understand how they were going to react to certain things.
Right.
Whether that's my orders, whether that's how do I give them the best advice, orders, and how they're going to take it, you know, and how they're going to get it. And then make sure I find a way for them to get along with the other guys underneath too. The stress and pressure, not only of being in combat, but what's going on with their home lives, with their wives and kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Particularly, like most of them were married, I'd say. And that was another concern. And that really affected them. They go, you know, weeks or several mail drops without a letter from their wife, and they're going, uh-oh, what's going on, you know, at home? And I haven't heard from her since, you know, 2 months ago or a month ago, and it was just destroying them. And that was affecting their whole attitude and performance, and you had to figure out what to do about that. So that was a big extra thing that I had to deal with. And when I was kind of the leader that said, you know, I'd usually be not just sitting back telling the guys, you go do it. I was usually there doing it with them, but not putting myself quite in the danger that, they would be in, as I am the leader, and they need a leader, and I have to make sure I'm protecting myself as well as I can, but to be part of the operation. I think that was a big thing that I had to learn too. And they learned that Sergeant Cape wasn't real excitable and didn't jump all over them when they did something wrong. But if they did it again, or if they pushed me too far, they saw a different Sergeant Cape, because then it was jeopardizing their lives, my life, everybody's life around. So I made them sure they understood that. And I had a couple guys, I told you this too, that were really immature in my squad and needed a lot of supervision and guidance and advice. I even had one guy that was convicted of several crimes, and the judge told him, you're going to prison or you're going to Vietnam, which would it be? And I didn't realize they did that. And I got that guy and he was a troublemaker. He was different than the rest of the guys, and I had to really watch him and see how he's affected. And we had a racial thing going on too at that time. Within
your group.
Yeah.
Mixed racially.
I actually had, and I think I'd mentioned this, I actually had an African American come in, and this was when we were in Da Nang toward the end of my tour. We had our own NCO barracks, hooches, for the NCOs, separate from the privates and the corporals. They were in separate hooches. And they weren't allowed, unless we gave them permission, into our hooches, because it often caused trouble, particularly if they start smoking marijuana or drinking or something and not be completely what they should be. So I had a African American that was actually from Racine, Wisconsin. Clarence was his name. Clarence, I'll think of his last name. Anyway, we got along great at first, and I saw as he started involving himself with the guys, it became a black clique and a white clique. And he did not, and he acted at first like there was no difference in our, at all. Just because he was black and I was white, we got along fine. Everything was fine. He was pretty educated. He seemed like he's a pretty smart guy on top of things. Younger guy, but he was good when he first got there. But he got with some black African American guys that really caused some trouble. And I had the one day where he actually came in our hooch, and they were carrying on and doing drugs. I said, you got to get out of here. You can't do that here. And he said, I ain't leaving. You can't tell me what to do here or whatever. So I had a little confrontation and had to tell him to get out or else. And he hauled off and slugged me in the jaw and knocked me to the floor. And his buddies just stood there. And I'm with his buddies, meaning the three of them, three of them and me, try to tell them they got to get out of there.
Were they all African American? They're all black?
Yeah. And I think they were on drugs at the time. He wasn't acting normal. And that was bad. So I had to report him, and he ended up getting demoted in rank, and you just don't do that. So, and I couldn't let that go.
Was that because that was, like what we're going through now. That's also, it was a turbulent time then, those years.
Yeah.
So was that something constant?
Toward the end of the war, like we were in Vietnam, that's what I'm reading, and the racial thing became the white man's war. I don't know if you've heard this term, rather than a Vietnam American war.
Yeah.
So I heard that a lot from the African American side, and it was a shame what happened, really.
Yeah.
And it was a shame what happened to him.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for him because I could see him deteriorating and saying things and doing things that just weren't right, and they were negatively influenced. A couple of them, only two. We had several, but just two of them were, not real good. They were a bad influence on him. So. as a sheriff.
So it was hard to work as a squad with.
Yeah. And how do you keep something like that, you know, and be able to, you know, give commands and select every, you know, you make decisions all the time. Who's going to do what? What do you do? You know, it's like the police force, you know, you talk about the police force. And I've heard the police force, a lot of them are talking on the contrary. We lay off the blacks more than we do the whites a lot of times because we don't want to have the, you know, the black-white thing come up, the racial thing come up, being accused of, you know, being negatively toward the blacks, you know, the African Americans. So it was the same way with me in giving out orders. I wanted to be careful because they'd say, you know, hey, you're always picking me for this. How come? You're prejudiced, you know.
Was it with everybody, or were there? I mean, are certain times of the period you were over there? I mean, did people mix well, or you think it was just a tense, or was it tense all the time?
No, not all the time. Generally, we mixed well. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Have you been in touch with any of them before to mix for your reunions? Or
that's one of the guys was Tootie.
Oh, okay, Tootie. Okay. No. Okay.
He wasn't the two guys, but he was one of the guys, African Americans, that was in our group. And the other two guys did end up in some trouble with the military and the police, and you know, Tootie wasn't that level. Tootie was a pretty decent guy, but he was kind of chumming with them sometimes, and but he was a little more mature, I think, and didn't buy into what they were telling him about how bad the white people are, and you know, don't trust white people and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was that period, a lot going on.
How could you have that? You know, I can't have that in the military. But.
Yeah, because it's better now. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, and then you mentioned too. Now the other thing was we put the video together, and I've got that video.
In the party.
Yeah.
In the reunion.
I don't know if I can go. I can't really go through because it shows all the guys. It would take a long time. But is there anything you want me to talk about on the video?
What I wanted, well, the fact that you have the video. So this is a video your wife and your daughter put together for one of your daughter-in-law for one of your reunions.
My son's wife.
Okay.
Sarah. Sarah, yeah, and my wife Beth. Yeah.
You know what we'll do?
We did the video, which was the pictures from the guy.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know our connection's dying. So I think what we'll do.
You see me okay?
I can see you, but it is the connection's getting bad. So what I want to do we'll do a little, because this is easy to do. So let's do something and just dedicate. We'll talk maybe I want to look at the video, and then just, you know, I'm going to wrap up here just so that it's going on to the reunion and getting together. Is it people pulling their photos together? If you have a list of phone numbers and names, you know, that's a start. And, you know, we can maybe kind of reach out and see if somebody wants to, you might want to do it, you know, instead of it's better than nothing is to at least try something. It might be kind of good to connect and maybe try to use the Zoom, but I'll wrap it up here because we got this was a good deal. Got some updates and got some thanking your sister and mom and everybody, the importance of letters. And they saved them for you. That helps. It's great. Anyway, but I want to thank you. If there's anything else, let me know. But we're going to do another call. There's no end to this. So thank you so much, and we'll see how this works. You were a real good sport. I appreciate it. So we will be signing off, and I'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay, Sue.
Thanks, Chuck. Bye bye. It's great.
Bye bye.